Thank you, Kim. Thank you, James. Yes, you both said chapters are looking for presenters. That's not just KOTESOL chapters. That's everywhere. Everywhere you can think of always wants people to do presentations. They're very in demand. There are huge benefits for your career, for your life to become comfortable and become good at public speaking. And yeah, when Kim reached out to me to say, hey, would you like to give some advice, some tips for new presenters? I thought, well, do I have time to do that? And then I thought, actually, this is a topic I've covered a lot. I've covered this with university students a lot in Korea. And the reason I wanted to present today is I've always successfully managed to turn very shy students who hated public speaking, like Kim maybe hated a little bit in her first presentation, after a few weeks into very confident and skilled public speakers. And so in my experience, everybody can become comfortable, everybody can become successful at public speaking, but there's just a few things you need to know to set you on that journey. And that's what I want to cover today. In this presentation, it's not just advice from me, because if it's just me who gives you advice, maybe you think, well, it might just be his personality, maybe he just knows how to do it. What I did is I reached out a couple of weeks ago to a lot of presenters in KOTESOL to give you advice and show that we are all very similar, and also show that everybody can become comfortable and successful at public speaking. Today's workshop is quite interactive, so expect the use of breakout rooms. If that scares you, then try to get used to it, because we want to also get you on stage one day doing presentations. So having said that, I just want to give a quick introduction to my background in public speaking. So you can see here, probably my most notable presentation was a TEDx talk. This was at the end of 2018. Note this down here. You can see I did this on overworking, the problems. Still, I might have this problem. Everybody can have this problem where you work too much and then you suffer a lot of health problems. And actually, you turn out to be a lot less productive if you work too much. So that's probably my most, I guess, famous presentation, being a TEDx talk. So I really enjoyed doing that one, but it was quite scary. Before I did a TEDx talk, as Kim and James mentioned there, I really like doing KOTESOL presentations. It's a great way to develop your skills in public speaking and become comfortable. So actually 2 years ago, almost to the day, the same chapter, Kim's chapter, Daegu, I think Kimberly, where is she sitting? Maybe there. I did the same topic, conquering the fear of public speaking. A little bit different. That was much more, I guess, hands-on. The tips were a little bit different, but I've done a lot of KOTESOL presentations over the past 6-7 years. When the pandemic began, the horrible pandemic, which is still with us today, I had to adapt and turn to doing online workshops. And so James's chapter here, Yongi chapter, was, I think, my first online presentation. So you can see I used a green screen, I hooked up my microphone, and you can watch that on YouTube. If you just go on the KOTESOL YouTube channel, you can find that one. And then actually, just maybe 10 days ago, I did one for the Daegu chapter, all on Zoom, all like this. So yeah, I'm very active. I love public speaking, and I've got a lot to talk about today. Before we set you on this path to overcoming the fear or facing the fear of public speaking, let's talk about the biggest challenge that I think every person I've ever met has to deal with to become good at public speaking. So let's hear a little bit from a few KOTESOL presenters.
This was actually my very first presentation I did at an international KOTESOL conference, and it almost didn't happen. Why? Because I was scared. My brain inside my head was telling me every excuse not to do it. You know, there are going to be teachers with PhDs. Oh, lots of teachers have their masters. Oh, there are people with certificates galore.
And only, I think, 2 people showed up. The entire time I was worried because I didn't think I had anything to offer all of these more experienced teachers that I had anticipated showing up.
So I was excited and I was scared. I was very, very scared. I'll never forget the first time I presented. It was a workshop on apps for the classroom for the Youngin chapter, and there were 3 people in the audience. Even though the audience was really small, I was still very nervous, and my heart rate was up, and I couldn't really calm down. But now I've presented 50 times for KOTESOL over the years.
Definitely had imposter syndrome, and I was really nervous. I think I didn't sleep very well the night before.
We heard from some very notable presenters in KOTESOL. So if you attend a lot of KOTESOL events, you probably have watched some of these presenters, and you would not believe now that all these presenters were so nervous going into not just their first presentation, but maybe every presentation they do. So now I'm going to put you in breakout rooms for just 5 minutes, and I just want you to discuss this question in your group. Why does public speaking make us nervous? Understanding this question before you learn anything else can really help you overcome it. So now let me put you in breakout rooms. We have 43 people. Okay, here we go. So get ready. Please talk with your group. Why does public speaking make us nervous? What is it about public speaking that is so scary? And welcome back. I think everybody is back now. So I'm interested to hear a few ideas or a few opinions for what makes you nervous when doing public speaking. So I'll call on a few people who I recognize. How about Kim? Since you said in your presentation, your first presentation, you were quite nervous, you were quite terrified. Why? What made you nervous?
So for me personally, it was I was worried because I was talking about my MA thesis in particular, and like, was I really confident in what I was saying and confident in my findings? And I hadn't got my results back yet as well, so I was like, this they could come back and say this was garbage, and I'm presenting on this now. But actually, my result was really good, so it was fine. But so I was like, oh my God, what if people listen to what I'm saying and just think, what is this girl talking about? She has no clue whatsoever. And that made me really nervous, especially if somebody challenged me about it. But some of the other people I was talking to in the breakout room were saying, like, making a mistake. A big fear. So I think that was also something for me. Like, even though nobody knew what I was talking about, if I got off track, how do I get back on it again? It was one of my big fears when I was doing it.
Okay, I think I've heard that a lot before from students. Same fears there. So thank you. And I'm going to pick on one more person. I can see very close to Kim's name in the list, Brian. Brian is actually the president of KOTESOL. So I'm curious to hear what Brian thinks about this.
First, I want to mention that I was actually there when Kim was speaking, and it was completely unnoticeable that she was feeling nervous. I think she seemed like a seasoned presenter, so I think
so. It was just in her mind. It was
sometimes
not
audiences
reflected.
have a very different perception. Yeah. But I think I agree. I think we were talking about a fear of judgment. I think, like, if something goes wrong, I no longer really get nervous when I'm teaching. And I think if something goes wrong in class, like there's several more classes that day, it's like, it's not remembered later, but there's this fear that, like, if something goes wrong, everyone's going to remember. And there's, even if the session isn't recorded, it's still kind of like it's recorded in people's memories, and it's going to be a mark against my name, that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that's similar to what I'm going to say now. So I've taught this topic a lot, and I've asked so many students, hundreds over the years, why they feel nervous doing public speaking. So I'll give you some of the answers. First of all, I just want to say that everybody gets nervous. I can't think of anyone I've ever met in presenters' lounges before they do presentations, or behind the scenes when we were rehearsing for our TEDx talk. I think everybody gets nervous. It's just, it's human, it's normal. It doesn't matter who you are. But why do we get nervous? I think one, maybe similar to what Brian said there, fear of judgment in our minds. We want to do a good presentation. Why wouldn't you want to look good doing a presentation? And so we feel like we're in an audition. It's like American Idol. People are watching, and at the end they'll hold up like a rating. That was great. That was terrible. If you think most of the time we just speak in conversation, we're not worrying about, am I boring? Did I say the right thing? Did I make a mistake? But we do worry about that in our first presentations. Kim mentioned mistakes. If you think that you have to be perfect when you're doing public speaking, then yeah, you would be very worried, because I've never seen a perfect presentation. I've never given a perfect presentation. So if you don't want to make mistakes, you will be very nervous. Also, maybe Brian said that, loss of status or loss of face in your mind, maybe in your regular life, you have this status, this reputation, and you worry it is all on the line when you do that presentation. If I look nervous, if I do a bad job, it will change everything. So we do fear loss of status. Also, we tend to put too much pressure on ourselves, especially if it's our first presentation in front of a lot of people. We start to think it's like the Super Bowl, the World Cup final, all or nothing. We must do an amazing presentation or everything is over. Do or die sort of mentality, which would not be good. You would be nervous. Also, some people are naturally shy. So I think if you're shy in regular conversations, you're probably still going to be shy on a stage talking to lots of people. If you watch my TEDx talk, I addressed this a little bit, where I said when I was younger, I was extremely shy. I was a very shy child. I would get nervous just walking into a room with people, never mind standing on a stage talking to people. So if you feel like that now, then you're probably going to feel like that on a stage. However, I do want to say one thing. I think if you are naturally shy or you've been shy before, it might give you a little bit of an advantage in public speaking. That sounds quite strange, but I think if you have experience of being nervous all the time when you speak to people, then you might actually have a useful experience that you can use when you're doing public speaking. It's something you're accustomed to. It's nothing new. Whereas someone who's not shy, maybe this is all scary, all new, because they don't normally feel nervous around people when they're talking. Also, if you have no experience and you know people are watching you do something with no experience, of course you're going to be nervous. I think it would be anything. Imagine you go on a stage and somebody says, hey, play the violin, and 100 people are watching, and you've never played the violin before, or you've never done it in front of people before. You'll be nervous. Why wouldn't you be nervous doing something new in front of people? So when you do that first presentation, there is also that fear. I've never done this before. I'm like the fledgling bird. I'm jumping off the cliff for the first time. So we understand why we get nervous, but more importantly today is how do we overcome the fear of public speaking? Before we really jump into the heart of this and really get good advice for you on how to do this, and I think we can help you with that today. I do again want you to discuss this in your groups, because sometimes people in groups have better ideas than the presenter, and that could be the case today too. So let me put you back in your groups again, just for 5 minutes. In your opinion, how do we overcome this fear that seems to affect everybody, or at least everybody that I've ever met? So how do we overcome the fear of public speaking? Welcome back. So let's talk about overcoming the fear of public speaking, which, judging by the Google form responses that I read earlier, this is what a lot of people came here today for. They really want to deal with this fear of public speaking. I can see a good friend of mine here. I would like to ask Rakesh now, because I saw while you were in the breakout rooms in the chat window that Rakesh had something interesting about this, that he thinks about experienced public speakers. Rakesh, what are your thoughts? What do you think? How do we overcome the fear of public speaking?
Thank you for calling me out, Wayne. It's a pleasure to be here and a wonderful opportunity to share. Thank you for that. I was just sharing with Lucinda about, how we could approach this fear of public speaking, how to overcome that. And one thing that immediately jumped out of my mind was, the mindset necessary, right? So I think the mindset, in particular, the bias for action, is very important, because knowing is not doing. You may know a lot of what to do and how to do, but if you don't do it, it just remains as an idea in your mind, and it just doesn't go forward. You're not able to, make it into a substance, right? Because this is public speaking is, I think, about building your way forward. You cannot analyze your way forward. You cannot optimize your way forward. You need to build your way forward. So for that, we need to do. So action is very important, bias for action. So because once we do that, we are going to learn the way, what is most suitable for us as a person, because public speaking is very individual. We cannot replicate somebody else. We can only try to be a better version of our own selves when it comes to public speaking, right? So that brings self-confidence, leading to self-assurance, right? And once that happens, it's, going to go forward with, once you have self-confidence, self-assurance, self-acceptance, and then you just go there and share whatever you think and the way you believe is right. And once you're so sure and accepted by your own self, everybody's going to accept you. So this is how I see it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, definitely similar to what other people have said on this topic, and similar to what I will be saying as well. So thank you, Rakesh. So now let's hear from some KOTESOL presenters on what they think on this.
And let me tell you, I still get scared. I can't calm down. I waste entire conferences trying to calm myself down. But there's a better way. I get excited instead. Let me show you what I have to say today. I get excited. I want to tell them something. So I focus on that feeling. I don't try too much to calm down. And that's the biggest hint I can give any presenter. Don't waste too much energy trying to force yourself to be calm. Be excited. Love what you have to say. And then show the audience, I have this to tell you. That's the best advice I have.
When I just kept seeing people come in and I was getting more nervous and more nervous and more nervous. But I said to myself, okay, I know the topic. I know the information well. I can do this. But I also said to myself that if somebody asks me a question, be honest with them. If it's a question I don't know, be honest and say, you know what? I honestly don't know that answer right now, but if you give me your email, I will look it up and I will get back to you.
Practice, 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 but don't delay too much. Just do it. And the more times that you practice, the more natural it will become. And remember that almost everyone feels a little bit nervous before they present. It's pretty natural. It's part of performance.
Newer presenters often ask me, how do I overcome my fear of presenting in front of my colleagues? I have some thoughts on this. The first thing is get prepared. Do the research you need to do. If it's based on your own experience, put together some notes that are relevant to the topic that you're talking about until you're very, very comfortable with it. Remember that people are nice. They really are. No one is there to see you fail. They're there to learn from you, from your experience and your knowledge, and they're there to share with you and teach you a few things as well.
Start to finish, just imagine yourself going through it to make sure you know exactly what's going to happen, when, and how. Have fun. We love our presenters. We're all just there to learn from each other, to appreciate each other, and you have something to contribute to. We want to learn from you. We want to share with you. So relax, go for it, and enjoy.
Be nervous. Everyone is. The idea that you don't get nervous when you're presenting is a ridiculous idea. Everyone's nervous when they present. Some of us cover it up better than others, and most of us know to use that nervousness to energize our presentation and make it more more lively and more natural. So if anyone tells you, oh, don't be nervous and practice and prepare, no, that's not true. If you're over practiced and over prepared, maybe you're not nervous, but that's not likely. Most of us never reach that level.
And that's an expression I say to my students a lot, especially when they're about to do their first presentations, where there's that 10 minutes before the first presentation. Everybody looks so nervous, so worried, like the end of the world is coming. And when students say, teacher, I'm really nervous, I always say, hey, if you're not nervous, you're not human. I don't know anybody who wouldn't get nervous doing presentations, especially if it's your first few presentations. That's very human. You're going to be nervous. So I think the question of overcoming the fear of public speaking is probably the wrong question. It's more, how do you accept the fear of public speaking? I guess kind of like going on a roller coaster. There might always be those butterflies in your stomach before you jump on the roller coaster. Same with public speaking. There's always going to be a few nerves. And I think they can help you, in my experience, as Stuart Gray was saying there, they can make you more lively, more energetic, you can be excited. And I think they can also help you concentrate. If you're nervous, it probably means you want to do a good job. If you're not nervous, probably means you don't care that much about the presentation. Tori said there, Tori Folkelson, he said that everybody gets nervous, even if, unless they over-prepare. I thought about this as well. I think if you did public speaking every day, let's say 5-6 times a day, like we do as teachers, then maybe it's like a day job. You don't feel that nervous anymore because you do it so much. But if you do presentations, let's say once a month or on special occasions, then I think you will always be a little bit nervous. So it's more about accepting that everybody is nervous. It's completely normal, it's completely natural, it's completely human. What I want to talk about now, though, I always tell this to my students, is although we feel nervous, we don't have to look nervous. That's very different. You can be so terrified on the inside, but you can still look confident on the outside. And research shows that if your body looks confident, your body will eventually persuade you you are confident. So you can trick your mind a little bit. So let's take a look at what a lot of people, I've seen a lot of students like this react, how they look when they do their first presentations.
Thank you, Mayor and fellow Rachelanians. That electrician must be a Democrat. Thank you, Mayor and fellow Rachelanians. I'm proud to be here today. Attaboy, Luther!
Now, let me show you a clip. Every semester I teach public speaking to my university English students, Korean students, and by the end, they're usually pretty confident with their public speaking skills. But you saw in that video clip, that's an actor called Don Knotts, I believe, playing a character called Luther, which he's always nervous. That's kind of the character that he created. But when you're nervous, why does your body start doing this? Why do you start looking like that? Let's talk about that now.
I do want to mention here, though, is you can feel scared, you can feel nervous, but you don't have to look nervous. And the question I want to ask you now is, when you feel nervous, why does your body do this? Why do you start shaking? Why do you move your arms in your pockets? Why do you hold them here or here and start looking like this? Why does your voice shake? Why do you start sweating? Why does that happen when you feel nervous? Not just presentations, but anytime you feel nervous, that will happen. Why? Why does that happen? The answer goes back to a long time ago. Think thousands, hundreds of thousands of years ago, we didn't do many presentations, maybe to our group, our family, but we didn't do many presentations. The only time we would get nervous is when we were in danger. So maybe you're hunting for some nice food, you're hunting a zebra in the jungle, and you're walking, and then you look and you see something, it is a lion, and if your body is like this, oh, hey, how's it going? What is going to happen? Of course, the lion will eat you very easily. You are going to die. So being nervous was to defend our bodies. So we cover ourselves, we protect our lungs, our heart, our liver, we protect our body. Our arms become very stiff and very strong. We start trying to hide. You might see this in presentations. Students, they start looking like they're hiding from people. Like, oh, I do my presentation over here. Or they don't look at people, they look over here. Hello, my name is Wayne. Why? Because in their mind, it's a lion, it's a shark, it's somebody trying to kill you. There is no difference in your body between a lion trying to kill you and giving a presentation. So it's something you really need to remember. When you give a presentation, there are no lions. There's no alligators, no crocodiles, no sharks in the audience ready to eat you. So don't worry about it that much. Try to control your body. Try to look confident. Try to look comfortable. Because remember, your brain is wrong. There is no reason to be scared or nervous of public speaking.
Yes, it's the fight or flight response that we all feel, especially if it's our first presentations, where we do try to protect our vital organs from danger. So anytime you teach students public speaking, you'll see this in their first presentations. They will start hiding behind the podium. They won't make eye contact. They won't look at the audience. They'll start maybe crossing their arms or putting them down the side because that nervous energy, that fight or flight response has kicked in. And yeah, it might be good if you're fighting a lion, but not so good when you're doing a presentation. So I think a big battle is trying to accept and tell your brain, no, this is not a lion's den. There's no lion about to attack you. It's just a presentation. So now you know why you're nervous. You've got some ideas for overcoming feeling nervous or accepting feeling nervous. What's the first step? What do we do now? So you've decided, I'm ready to face my fear and do my first presentation. What should we do first?
And that's what I would encourage you to do it kind of locally first at your chapter, and then to go and do it at another chapter, and then finally maybe present at a national or international conference with KOTESOL.
So most of us start small, presenting to a small group of people. Start at the chapter level, present a few short presentations. Then many of them don't even have to be long. You can just present an idea, a teaching idea, or something that you find interesting, and get some discussion going on that.
Start small. Start at a regional conference and then get bigger as you get more and more comfortable.
Great advice. Yeah, why dive into the deep end and do the terrifying experience when you can start small? So no matter what organization you are in or your workplace, there must be a way for you to start small. In KOTESOL, you see we have, as was mentioned, big conferences, the national conference, the international conference, but a lot of people, to cut their teeth, build their confidence, accept this fear, they start with local chapters. So there's all these different chapters that we heard earlier at the beginning of this workshop, always looking for presenters. And you don't need to be an expert. You don't need all this experience. Doesn't matter what your experience level is, KOTESOL would love to be the place where you start building these skills. And that's what I did. That's why I joined KOTESOL, because at the end of 2014, I wanted to start becoming better at public speaking. I wanted to face this fear of public speaking, and KOTESOL is one of the best places to do it. So you can see all the time we have different events. Here's today's event, a symposium here, but then here, 2 local events. that could be you. If you want to, and you want to present and face this fear and go on the journey to becoming a successful public speaker, or at least a confident public speaker, then why not volunteer to do a local event where the pressure is lower, maybe not so many people, and you can cut your teeth. So yeah, don't dive in, start small, start in the shallow end. Now, so let's say you choose a local event, a local chapter, and then the next question is, well, what do you talk about? What idea do you present? There's some good advice on that too.
Just come up with a topic that's inspiring for you or something you think is useful to share. I'm sure everyone will appreciate your contribution, especially if you come up with an interesting concept, maybe a story. People love stories. And I guess the main thing is don't try to be too ambitious. I know when I was beginning to present, I always wanted to do too many things, and then I had to rush through things and I felt a bit stressed. So just take it easy.
That I think it's tempting to see a presentation as like your one opportunity to share every single hard-won piece of teaching wisdom. But there are lots of opportunities to present, and you'd never use that much content in a lesson with your students, right? So my tip is to take some time during the planning process to step back and let your teacher judgment take over a little bit.
I would emphasize more than perfection to focus on connection, finding things that are sticky for people to connect with, and less is more.
Present about what you love. Start with what you're passionate about. Every teacher has their pet methodologies, their pet ideas. Present about those. Start with those. And then, of course, you can branch out later. But start with things you love, because if you're presenting about things you're passionate about, then that's going to come through and bleed through into your presentation, and it'll make it more energetic and more interesting.
All great advice. Yes, start with something you're really comfortable with. Why do something that would be very difficult, complicated? Don't reinvent the wheel. Just stick with something you know and would be very comfortable. Something you're passionate about, inspired to share, because then that, as Tori said there, that will bleed through into your presentation. There's one thing I think was missed there, though, and this has really helped me a lot. And it's not just before you do your presentation, choosing a topic, knowing what you want to present. As if you've watched videos by Simon Sinek, understanding the why is really important. Not the why in your presentation, but why you want to do public speaking. What is your vision? What do you want to achieve, let's say, in 10 years from now or 1 year from now? That's what I want you to think about now. So I'm going to put you in breakout rooms again. This is really important because public speaking is scary and terrifying the first time you do it. And how do you accept this fear? How do you keep presenting to one day become effective, confident, successful at it? I think it's having that vision, that long-term vision that will help you keep going, because you can see the end result. You can see the outcome there in the distance, and every time you present, you're getting a step closer to achieving your vision. So what is your vision for public speaking? What do you want to get out of it? Why are you here today? Why do you want to become comfortable at public speaking? Let me again put you back in your groups. Please talk for 5 minutes. Why? What is your why? What is your vision for public speaking? So now let's talk about your vision. Why? What is your why? Why do you want to face this fear of public speaking? Why do you want to become good at public speaking? Let me choose a name on the list that I recognize. Let's say Lucinda, you're here. What is your vision? What's your why in public speaking?
I just had a feeling, Wayne, that you were gonna say my name.
You knew, a sixth sense, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was telling Rakesh that this was a on purpose meeting today because I did have a workshop later this month, and it's my first solo workshop. And I am looking to establish myself in the TESOL community and eventually speak at an international conference at KOTESOL and eventually at an international conference for TESOL. And that is going to be a long road, and my public speaking is not there yet. So I need to get there. So I'm going to have to practice for a very long time, I think, to get where you are, Wayne.
How long do you think? Like 1 year, 2 years, 10 years?
10 years, I think, actually. I grew up very shy. I was one of those kids that hid behind my parents' knees and wouldn't talk to people. So
I was the same. Yeah, I would hide behind the sofa anytime somebody would visit the house. So I know the feeling.
Yeah, I'm actually just starting to get into public speaking this year, and talking to students is very, very different from public speaking. As somebody in the chat was saying, it is very, very different.
Why is it different? What do you think is different about it?
I think the different thing is the authority. I think Rhea in her video she was talking about what was she saying? The imposter syndrome. Yeah. You have a imposter syndrome, or I feel like I am putting on imposter syndrome if I am public speaking. I feel like I have imposter syndrome. So if you're teaching, I have qualifications, but if I am public speaking, then I have qualifications and I know what I'm talking about, but my audience also knows everything I'm saying as well. So it's, scarier. And I was talking in the chat that it helps to remember that my audience is also human, and to get to know my audience as well.
They're not lions, that's right.
Yeah, they're not lions. They're not going to eat me. So I like to show up early and talk to people and get to know them and remind myself that they're human. I'm human. It's okay. They're not going to kill me. And that does help a lot. Definitely.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think some of what you said there is definitely going to be covered today. Yes, so let's move on. Thinking about your vision, Lucinda said there she thinks it will take 10 years. And funnily enough, that's exactly what I said to myself when I jumped into public speaking, especially with teachers for the first time, because I thought, how could you become good at something just by doing one presentation or even 10 presentations? Actually, in hindsight, I think you can become good quite quickly. But I think it is a good idea to set a long-term goal, let's say 5 years, 10 years, because this helped me a lot. It takes the pressure off having to do a good job every single time. So when you first get into public speaking, there will be presentations that didn't go so well. Maybe you weren't happy with them, maybe you were uncomfortable. But if you have this long-term vision, you can say, well, that was just practice. I will learn from that and I will improve. And I guess a lot of teachers, I've seen very confident teachers when I did classroom observations in front of their students, so charismatic, very confident. But if you ask them to do a presentation in front of their peers, in front of their teachers, other teachers, co-workers, no chance would they ever volunteer to do it. And I always found that a bit strange. And I did feel a little bit like that way when I first started. But then actually I have a different perspective now, which is, although they might know just as much as me or even more than me, that can actually be very useful, which I'll explain a little bit later. And as Lindsay said earlier in the presentation, in my experience, every audience that I've been in wants you to do well. They want to know your interpretation. They want to hear your opinion. They're not there to pass judgment. And like I used to believe, where are your citations? Where's your references? You made a mistake. Don't ever come back to KOTESOL again. That doesn't really happen. It's the complete opposite. So you've got the vision, you've got your idea, you know where you want to present. For me, the next part is the structure of your presentation. Like the boy there, he's building a sandcastle. I'm sure he had the image of the sandcastle before he started constructing. Same with a building. Before it exists, you need to think about the structure. I don't want to spoil this presentation too much, but when I was preparing this presentation, I do this for every presentation. In my mind, I have an idea of what I want to talk about, what I want to cover. With this presentation, a little bit different too, because I had these videos coming in from other presenters, and I had to think about how could I group them into areas I wanted to cover. So I won't keep that on the screen any longer in case I spoil it. But yes, you do need to prepare a structure so you know where your presentation is going. A question that came up on the Google form, one person pretty much asked this question: should I write a script for my presentation? And I've looked into this a lot. There's really only one word, and that is no. And I tell that to my students, I tell that to teachers, first-time presenters. The reason is, one, it's very easy to forget what you are going to say if you are trying to remember every single word that you have memorized. When you're under pressure, when it's your first time, you're nervous, you might easily get distracted by the audience. You could easily forget what you want to say. So I never recommend doing scripts for that reason. I recommend almost like free talking, but around certain bullet points or ideas, or around your structure. And I thought, well, is that correct? And so I did some research into it. And actually, Tim Urban, you might have watched his amazing TED Talk. If you haven't watched it, definitely watch it. Inside the Mind of a Master Procrastinator, which makes a lot of sense if you watch it. He also looked into this before he did his TED Talk, the big TED Talk on the actual TED stage. And he wrote a very interesting blog post about this, where he pretty much summed up the different options. So let's take a look. We can see these different methods here for giving a presentation. And we have a key up here too. So the first method is wing it. Wing it, if you're not sure, means no structure, no plan, just as it comes into your mind, just speak and deliver your presentation. Is that a good option? Well, we have a key up here. Red is scariness for the speaker. Green is boringness, or is it boring for the audience? And blue is difficulty, not in terms of giving the speech, but in terms of preparation needed. So we can see for wing it, just speaking as it comes into your brain, very low amount of preparation needed. It could be in the middle for boring, maybe because it's unpredictable. If it's your first presentation, it would be very, very scary. Let's have a look. Talk through a set structure. Boring is low. Why? Because you prepared, you've had time to consider what you're going to cover. Scary is kind of in the middle. Boring is low, and difficulty is a little bit higher. It's in the middle because it requires preparation, like you saw with my structure there and preparing materials. Now, read off a script. This is a mistake a lot of students make. I don't see presenters do this almost ever in KOTESOL or in workshops, where they are literally reading off a script, where they, it's like they're just, you can't even see their face sometimes because it's obscuring the view. Scariness could be the lowest, because you don't have to worry about memorizing. You don't have to talk through a structure without any notes. You're just reading off the script. Difficulty needs a lot of preparation. I've done this with YouTube videos and using a teleprompt, and it does require a lot of preparation. Imagine if you prepare a 1-hour presentation. That would take so long to write the whole script for that. Boring, I think probably the most boring, as Tim Urban wrote here, because what's more boring than seeing someone just reading with a script in front of their face? Just barely memorized. This is where a lot of people make a mistake the first time if they're trying to memorize. Difficulty is here, boring is here. Scariness is very high if you are barely memorized, because you'll be so worried that you won't remember what you're going to say. Now this here is a level of memorization where it's like saying or singing the happy birthday song, where you could do it, you know, in your sleep. You would be so comfortable. Let's take a look. Boring would be very low, because it might be similar to having a structure where you've considered not just the bullet points, the ideas, but every single word to make it interesting. Scariness, if it's so well memorized, would be very low, because it's like singing happy birthday. Difficulty is sky high, the highest one. And Tim Urban basically says, only do this one in exceptional circumstances. If it is a once in a lifetime presentation and you have a very long time to practice, 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 and memorize. So this is what a lot of the TED speakers, not TEDx, that's different, the TED speakers, this is what they do. And they go through so many rehearsals, they get a lot of feedback, and they spend 6 to 9 months practicing almost every day to make sure it is like singing happy birthday. But can we do that in KOTESOL? Can we do that in our workplace? I don't usually get 9 months every day to get ready for a 15 or 20-minute presentation like a TED Talk. So in the vast majority of cases, number 2 is the best option. I do this with every presentation. I did this with my TEDx talk, where I've got the ideas, I've got the structure, but I don't know exactly what words will come out on the day. It could be different every single day I would present it, but it would be the same ideas, the same message, the same structure. So number 2 is the best option. 3C, only if you're doing a TED Talk or a once-in-a-lifetime presentation. But check out that blog post. It's an amazing blog post about using a script
structure
or not.
Till
here, let's hear from Julian now. Julian Warmington about structure. Let's hear what he's got to say.
What you're going to say what you're going to say, and then tell them what you said. Or, as my father put it, stand up, speak up, then sit down and shut up. What these sayings implore us to do is to raise the expectations of the listeners, then meet those expectations, and then summarize in review. And what that does is it restates your main points, which makes it easier for your audience to remember.
That's right, a good introduction to the structure there. So we do this with our students, same as with essay writing. If you ever taught any kind of structure, most people would say a presentation has an introduction, a body, and a conclusion where you introduce the topic. Like today, I think I said, we will talk about public speaking, maybe overcoming the fear or facing the fear. In the body is, like we always do in our English classes, we talk about a hamburger. This is the juicy part of your presentation. This is the main ingredients that give your presentation the flavor. And then the conclusion is usually quite similar to the introduction, where you summarize what you talked about. So for example, the introduction, we will talk about tips for public speaking. In conclusion, we talked about tips for public speaking. You also might give a call to action, something you want the audience to do after your presentation, or something they really must remember the most from your presentation. So a call to action from this might be, everybody can be a great public speaker. Go out and do it. Face your fear. Come on, you can do it. That kind of inspiring conclusion. Also, I think it's very important to say this as well. I tell this to all my students. In their essays too, but especially in presentations, try to open with a hook because it can really set the environment, set the scene for your presentation and grab the audience's interest. So let's take a look at a few hooks. These were the 3 hooks I used in my first 3 KOTESOL presentations from the end of 2014 until the mid of 2015. So I can tell you I was extremely nervous when this was on the screen and the audience was looking at it. staring at me, ready to give my first ever presentation. But what did I do to try and become comfortable and hook the audience? Yes, actually, I started with the Star Wars idea. And I had decided before that presentation, I had never seen anyone else do a presentation in KOTESOL before. It was my first presentation and my first event in KOTESOL. And I just said, hey, I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. If I think it's interesting, I'm going to go ahead and do it. And so I started with this one. I was a little bit nervous because you don't know what the reaction would be if it's I thought it might be very academic professors saying, what are you doing? Why are you playing the Star Wars song? Something like that. Actually, most of the audience smiled. Actually, most of them turned out to be public school teachers. And a few long-timers in KOTESOL were there. But there was no thumbs down and no people walking out when I started with that hook. The second one I did was in Cheongju on classroom management. Again, I tried to make it interesting. And this was the title was Command and Conquer Classroom Management. So on the slide that was showing on the screen while people were sitting down, I would play the Super Mario music. The theme of the conference was gamification. That's why I had games on the slide. And that was my very first slide. Like I've been doing today, getting you in breakout rooms, talking, thinking about questions. I think questions can be a great way to open a presentation, especially if you get people talking immediately. And it takes a lot of pressure off you because immediately the attention is off you and it's on the audience. This one was my first national conference, 2015. My class is quieter than a Bjork song, How to Get Students Talking. And this one I was nervous for as well. Actually, I did not sleep at all the night before because in my mind, national conference, oh, wow, it sounds like a big sports tournament. It's do or die, that kind of mentality. But it turned out to be okay, and I rather enjoyed it. But this was my hook. So you see there, rather than just saying, my students are very quiet, they're shy, they don't talk to each other, I tried to use an interesting opening. And I was so nervous about the technology because you have no idea sometimes what computer equipment you'll have on the day. And I'd put the videos in the PPT and I was so worried that maybe they wouldn't work. But thankfully, there was no problem. Now, we talk about this traditional structure. What really helped me, and I've kind of mentioned it already for my first few presentations, and I've done it today a little bit as well, is not necessarily that structure, but this kind of structure. You give a very brief introduction, and immediately you start posing questions. You get the audience talking about those questions, and then you ask the audience for their answers, and then you give your answers. And for me, this takes a lot of the pressure off because it's not, the expression sage on the stage. Here's Wayne Finley ready to impart all the wisdom. It's more of like a tennis match, back and forth, question, answer, question, answer. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you have a better idea than me? If you're nervous and you don't have experience, this can be a great way to run a workshop, run a presentation. So here are some examples in that first presentation I did. A lot of questions, more than I do nowadays, actually. How can you make a first class impression? Literally a first class impression. They discussed it, lots of interesting answers, and then I gave my answers. What are effective ways to utilize space in the classroom? again, they discussed, I gave my answers. The gamification conference, how can we make our classes multiplayer? And then trying to turn page numbers into a story. That was an idea I had, narrative lesson planning, trying to tell stories through your actual lesson plan. And then after I showed the Bjork videos, why are quiet students quiet? They covered that. I talked about it. What teaching approach do you use? They could discuss it. And then I could talk about approaches. A lot of people didn't really know about this one, so it gave me more confidence because I knew what they already knew or didn't know.
Keep it simple. Keep your content organized and presented in a straightforward manner.
So as Michael Free said there, yes, with the structure, with anything in your presentation, do try to keep it simple. And part of that is connected to this visuals or visual aids. So now I've been talking for a while there. I want to give you the chance to discuss this. How do you think we should use visuals in a presentation? Think of the presentations you've seen or presented. What do you think are the most effective or successful use of visuals? So let me put you back with your group. Please discuss visuals. What are the best ways to use visuals in a presentation? Thank you. Welcome back. There's one person I really want to ask about this because I've seen her give a couple of presentations now and they were very visual, and I thought the visuals were excellent in the presentation. So I think Lisa is the person I'm talking about. So Lisa Hunsberger, could I ask you, how do you think we should use visuals?
Well, I was just sharing with the ladies that I was in a room with that one of the things I always say is don't say what you mean, show what you mean.
Yeah.
And it's important to demonstrate, and like what you're doing right now, Wayne, you're not telling us things, you're demonstrating these things. You're talking about the different ways that you started your presentations, and you're actually showing us the actual presentations and what visuals you used. And one of the things that happens, I think, especially for presenters nervous, is there's a copy and paste that tends to happen from the notes to the slides. Yeah. And it makes sense because you're nervous and you want to be able to see something on the slide. Yeah. But it would be better to have like a flashcard to reference for each slide than to read, because that's where it gets really boring for the audience to attend a presentation and the presenter is just reading slide after slide after slide after slide. So the visuals help to break up the monotony, and they demonstrate precisely what you need.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I completely agree with Lisa's advice there. Yeah, as we saw with Tim Urban earlier, the most boring kind of presentation is when a presenter is 100% relying on a script. What I do is, I'll talk a little bit later about this, but I just use prompts. So for example, rather than a script, when I see an image, for example, I see here this image, I know exactly where I am in the presentation. I don't need the script, I don't need bullet points, I use the images. So try to find prompts rather than scripts, but we'll talk a little bit later how you can do that.
And to have some sort of visual story that is a takeaway that people will remember.
Create your own slide style. Don't use the formats that are offered already, especially by Microsoft. Use slides to guide your talk and keep on topic. And then make your slides available for others to refer to later. Yeah, I didn't expect to be talking for 5 years, basically in a row, but now I have a 5-year catalogue of talks and the slides, and I can borrow and chop and change at ease.
Keep your delivery free of technological bells and whistles. Say what you've got to say. People will appreciate it.
I agree with all of the advice there. Julian said, use your own style. That's what, thankfully, right from my first, I think any presentation I've done, I've always said, if I do a successful presentation, I want it to be done in my style, my way, not trying to copy anybody else. And if I don't do a successful presentation, then at least I'll have no regrets in how it's designed or what I'm presenting. So use your style, whatever that is, whether it is a very visual style, or I've seen great presentations using no visual aids. Actually, my last public speaking workshop 2 years ago, there were not really any visual aids, just some handouts. Or even just kind of text on a screen, but not a lot of text, just a few bullet points. So find your style that you find most comfortable. Make sure it fits as well, as Michael was saying. Don't just use technology because you have technology. You don't have to do that. Understand which technology will work best for the message, the presentation you want to give. Also, this is worth saying, the presentation is not the PPT, it is not the video, it is not the handouts. The presentation is you. So you can see a clip here from 2 years ago, my Yongin presentation on teacher burnout. Just like I'm doing today, I don't have text on there. Easier to do in a face-to-face presentation, but the focus should always be on you, your words, your delivery. It's just a bonus that you have those visuals there to aid what you are saying, but you are the presentation, not the PPT. So yes, I was telling a story there. As you see, it was visual. It wasn't just reading off a screen. Not sure if you had a chance to read that there, but yes, this is a mistake I've seen a lot, not just from students, but I've seen this in conferences too, where presenters, sometimes I've even seen a plenary speaker do this, where, as Lisa was saying, the whole script for the presentation is on the screen and the presenter is just reading it. And I feel like, what's the point of doing the presentation? Why not just email the script? And then you can stay at home. You don't even have to present. We can just read it. You know, it is a bonus to have the PPT there. It is not the presentation. So if you want to present something, find a better way to do that, which is not text. So if you want to say, don't use text, a lot of text in a PPT, maybe find a picture of a lot of text with a cross mark. You're giving the same message, but I think it's more memorable and is more interesting. Also, we call this reveal and conceal. So for example, a lot of presenters will use bullet points. And I think a mistake is to put all the bullet points on the screen immediately. Because what happens anytime I see a list of, let's say, 10 bullet points, immediately I will read all 10 bullet points and I won't even pay attention to what the presenter is saying. Maybe they're only talking about that first bullet point, but I've already read all 10 bullet points. Loses that unpredictability and it loses my focus. So what I always try to do, as you've seen I'm trying to do today, is when I'm talking about it, then you see the visual. So 10 days ago, when I was talking about creativity, measuring it through the Torrance test, I talked about one, then I would show the next one. I wouldn't show all of them at the same time, so the audience knows ahead of time before I say it. So as I was saying, a lot of people make the mistake, I finished my PPT, that's it, I finished my presentation, now I am ready to present. This is a big mistake. I've seen a lot of people do this, even at conferences, where people are saying, I finished my PPT the night before, now I'm ready. And I'm thinking, if it's the night before, you're probably not ready. And in some cases, I've even seen presenters making the PPT 1 hour before the presentation. I've seen sometimes in KOTESOL, presenters on their laptop 1 hour still making the slides for their presentation. And once they're finished, they think, oh, I'm ready, my presentation is finished. That is one of the biggest mistakes you can make being a new presenter. You definitely don't want to be doing that. The reason is, if you study any advice for giving presentation, some people call these the 3 Ps. The hallmark of a great presentation is practice, practice, practice. You must practice a lot. You must know your material inside and out. And if you make the PPT 1 hour or one night, or you don't look at it until you present, then you might struggle through the presentation. To give you an example, when I was designing this presentation today, I finished this around 2 days ago. And then yesterday, when I went to practice it, there were 2 images in the presentation. I couldn't remember what they were referring to. I had no idea. I was thinking, what was I supposed to, what was I getting at in that image? If I didn't practice, I would not know. And in the presentation, I would have tripped up and I would have been just staring at the screen like, what does this mean? I don't know. So if you don't practice, that can easily happen, especially if you're doing a very visual presentation. So practice, practice, practice.
It's rehearse. These days, like, you don't necessarily have to have people in front of you to practice and kind of get a feel about how your information would play. You can videotape yourself and send that to people, and they can watch the whole thing or part of it and give you feedback about whether they understand you or not, right?
So Maria is completely right. Even with a face-to-face presentation, you can record yourself very easily. My first few presentations, I didn't practice. Maybe the first 2, I didn't practice at all. Partly, I just didn't think I needed to, which is not right. And also, I think sometimes if you're very nervous, you don't want to practice because you don't want to think about the presentation. It puts you in that moment of doing the presentation. But now I can tell you every presentation I do, I always practice. So I gave one a few weeks ago at the TESOL Affiliate Network virtual event, and I had to practice that 2 or 3 times, and I'm glad I did, because there are some big benefits to more than 10 years ago now, 2010, I decided I wanted to be an English teacher. I wanted to see the world. So I jumped on an airplane and eventually decided that I wanted to go to South Korea. It looked like a fantastic place. One of the biggest things you'll benefit from if you practice is getting down the timing. This is the biggest problem, I think, for new presenters. Is, let's say you are given 50 minutes and you can easily not know the accurate time of your presentation, especially if you're very nervous. You think, oh, my presentation is too short. It will be over after 10 minutes and the whole audience will be staring at me. I'm going to finish too early. And what you'll find is when you do the presentation, it was actually closer to an hour or even 2 hours, all the material we're trying to cover. So my advice, I do this every time I practice. I set a timer and then I know accurately, do I need to take anything out? Do I need to add anything? And in my experience, it's always removing stuff because we are not good judges of time until we practice. Another thing I've noticed, I think that Bjork presentation was the first one I practiced because I knew it was a national conference and I really wanted to try and do it well, and I was very nervous about it. So I just took an audio recorder, a voice recorder, and I recorded myself practicing 2 or 3 times, and I noticed very quickly that by the 3rd time, my speaking was much smoother. All these fillers that people say we shouldn't do, you know, like I was saying, all those vocal fillers, they start to disappear. The reason is we tend to use these fillers because we are buying time. We need time to think. And if you practice a lot, that time to think disappears because you are so well rehearsed, you know what everything is referring to. So you'll see that these fillers do disappear if you practice 2 or 3 times.
Be prepared. Know your material and know what you are going to say. Know what the takeaway will be for your material. Know what it is that you want your audience to have.
Now, there's a question I want to ask you here. So let's imagine now it's your first presentation, maybe in a few days from now. It feels very close. You have practiced, all the materials are ready, and it's just time to do this presentation. This is something that is rarely covered in public speaking, but it is really important. And I think it's this question. How do you psych yourself up before the presentation? If you think of a prized fighter going into a big boxing match and they feel very nervous, they're very worried, what do you do before the presentation to put yourself in the best possible way to be ready for the presentation? How do you calm yourself, or how do you stay focused? How do you keep yourself positive? How do you motivate yourself? How do you psych yourself up? So that's a question I want you to discuss, because I'm very interested on this to see if it is similar to everybody or if it is different for everybody. And I can tell you, every presentation I do, even this one today, I have to psych myself up for it so that I am ready to face this fear of public speaking. At this time, because a couple of people have dropped out, I've randomized the groups again. So say hello to your new group people, if they are new, it is random. How do you psych yourself up before a presentation? And welcome back. I think everybody's back there. Yes, by the way, while you were in the breakout rooms, I did have a look at the chat window. So if you haven't been following the chat, definitely keep your eyes on it, because there's also some really good advice in there. One of them, when you're preparing your visuals, preparing your PowerPoint, your video, whatever it is, yeah, write some notes so you know what you were intending with that visual. Usually I'm okay with that. Usually I can remember. But with those two visuals, because it's been a very busy week, I couldn't quite remember. But yeah, if you make notes, you would never have that problem. That's good advice. For this question, we heard earlier from Lindsay about her feeling nervous, this kind of imposter syndrome. Everybody might know more than me. So Lindsay, before your first presentation, how did you psych yourself up, knowing it, because you felt like it's going to be very scary, you're not an expert. How did you mentally get ready for that?
Well, there were a few things I did. First, I practiced a lot. So like I said in my in the clip you showed, I mentally thought through everything I wanted to say and do. And so I felt very prepared going into it, which made me feel a lot more confident. And second, I did what I do before every presentation. I don't get nervous, but I have nerves, because I have so much like epinephrine in my system and norepinephrine. My hands shake and my voice shakes. And it's not because I'm scared, it's because I'm excited. So before I give a presentation, to get rid of some of that energy and those nerves, I breathe out and then smile. And you notice, if you ever see me give a presentation, I bounce when I come on stage, just a little bit, because
like
that
kind
increases
of that
my energy.
Swagger, that kind of energy right from the off.
Yeah, and it gets rid of some of the nervous energy and lets me kind of connect with the crowd as somebody who is energetic and excited. So even if it's my first time presenting something, I think those things can really, really help. The practice, the breathing, and smiling, enthusiasm.
I think that's, all great points there. Thanks, Lindsay. Smiling, I remember reading that if you smile, and even if you feel very nervous or worried or not in a good mood, just the act of smiling can trick your brain into being excited, being positive, being happy. So that's very good. And yeah, we're supposed to be nervous. And as Stuart said earlier, Stuart Gray and now Lindsay, try to switch that to excitement. I mentioned earlier that I couldn't sleep at all before one presentation. And I think it was half nerves, but half excitement, because I was really excited to do the national conference presentation. Sharing some more of what I think on this, or at least what I do. One, if I feel very nervous, I remember my vision, my long-term plans. Why am I doing it? Why is it important? How will this help me? I think it's anything. If you have a long-term goal, a long-term vision, it will help you accept the pain or the worry that you're suffering in that moment. So remembering the vision. I found music to help me a lot as well. It can really change. I don't know why, maybe it's just me, maybe you as well. It can really change my emotions. So let's say I'm feeling very nervous before something big, or at least I perceive it to be big. Just listening to some happy music, or I don't know, movie soundtracks really helps me get ready and face this fear that we all feel. So we all have different kind of music that we like. Find the ones that work for you. I have a particular playlist that I can turn to and say, this will help me if I have to do something a little bit scary. I have these on my refrigerator. My mom sent me them years ago, maybe 2013, inspirational quotes. A lot of them deal with struggle, pain, perseverance. And you see that successful people, no matter who they are, how famous they are, they have all been through the same situations. And that's, if you want to become successful at public speaking, yeah, you'll have to be in the same shoes as them, face your fears, deal with setbacks, keep improving. And if opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. I like that quote. Also turn to your support network. Maybe tell your friends that you're doing a presentation, your family, maybe even practice the presentation in front of them. Turn to those people who always support you no matter what, give you that encouragement, and will be proud of you no matter what. Whether you give a great presentation or one you weren't happy with, I think you should be proud, and the people around you should be proud, because you face something that is so scary for a lot of people. How about on the day of the presentation? A few tips on that as well. I always tell myself, don't hold back. My very first big presentation was in 2013, not in KOTESOL. It was actually my first ever presentation, really, in front of a big audience on a business trip when I was doing an admissions officer role for a university. And I was told, you'll be doing a 2-hour presentation. I didn't know the topic, to 600 people. This was going to be in China. And of course, being your first presentation, that sounds pretty terrifying. And no matter, and I felt so nervous, so scared, but heading into the presentation, maybe an hour before, 10 minutes before, looking at the auditorium, 600 people, the only words I could think of was, look, you can't guarantee a great presentation. You've never done one before, really. All you can guarantee is yourself. Don't hold back, just go for it. Just do what you can do your best. And that helped me a lot. And I pretty much say that anytime I do a presentation. If I don't hold back, I'm usually happy no matter what happens. Another big one, if you want to become really good at presentations, is be yourself, no matter what your personality is, whatever your interests are, whether you're naturally a comedian or naturally serious, accept it, be yourself. Authenticity goes a long way. I've also studied charisma, and a lot of people link charisma to authenticity, when somebody is just happy to express themselves as they are. If you are yourself in a presentation, then you can't really have any regrets afterwards, because you can't become somebody else. And if it does go well, I think you'll be very happy because you did it without trying to be something different. So be yourself is always big advice. I mentioned this earlier, a lot of times, especially if it's our first presentation or our first big presentation, we think it's the end of the world, the sky is going to cave in, volcanoes are going to erupt. We build the presentation into something in our minds much bigger than it actually is. At the end of the day, it's not an end of the world scenario, it's just a presentation. After this presentation, I guarantee you might think about my presentation a little bit, but I think most of you will be thinking about getting coffee, going for dinner, checking your Kakao Talk messages, checking emails, I don't know. But often your presentation, unless it's very memorable and it really stands out, often people move on with their lives very quickly after any presentation, no matter how good or bad it was. So just remember, it's just a presentation. It's not a big deal, really. On the day of the presentation, check the room. I did that today with Zoom, checking all the settings, make sure everything will be okay. If it's a face-to-face presentation, go into the room you're presenting, like I did with that Bjork presentation, check the equipment, well before anybody enters the room. I've gone to conferences earlier than the actual start time just to check the room, even though I was presenting like 5 hours later. I was that worried about the technology. So if you know you're reliant on the technology, check the room, check the equipment. That can really help you. Another one, I think this was mentioned earlier today, a good trick for me when I first started doing presentations: go to the room earlier, and if you can, if it's possible, depending on the schedule of the event, try to get there before anybody arrives. And you might feel a little bit nervous doing this, but it really helps. When people walk through the door, stand next to the door and greet them. Just say, hello, welcome to my presentation. Oh, nice to see you. Oh, you're here about public speaking. And it feels like those lions suddenly become supporters. They're not lions, they're not strangers in the audience anymore. They are friends cheering you on, because they might say something like, oh, I'm looking forward to your presentation. And you're putting names to these faces in the audience. So greet people has really helped me in the past.
Just go for it. Have fun with it. Present it. Be passionate about it.
Just be the penguin off the cliff and just do it. Give that presentation. Good luck.
We saw Leonie and Maria there. Yeah, just at the end of the day, all you can do, and I think Rakesh mentioned this earlier, you just have to do it. We can talk all day about these different skills, etc. But at the end of the day, what you need to do is just jump in, get the first presentation done, face that fear, and then you can start improving. After your first presentation, I think you'll probably be happy. Anytime you face a very big fear, very deep-seated fear like public speaking, I think no matter how well it goes, you're probably going to be a little bit elated or extremely happy because it is over and you did it. You triumphed over this fear. You might, if you're lucky, get feedback from the audience. And if you're very lucky, it will be nice feedback, like, good job, I enjoyed the presentation. Or, like I've done many presentations, you might get no feedback. People leave the room because life goes on. They're going to a different presentation, or they're going to grab lunch, or that coffee I mentioned. So you might get feedback after the presentation from other people. Advice also after your first presentation, don't dwell on it immediately, because we're often emotional. Sometimes I've left presentations and I've been kicking myself because I thought I made some particular mistake or it didn't go the way I expected. That's not what you should be doing if you can help it. Go get something to eat, go watch a different presentation. I don't drink, but if you drink, go do that. Take your mind immediately off the presentation. Once you have calmed down, maybe a day, a few days later, self-reflect on your first presentation. What was good? There's always good things. Every time I watch any student give a presentation, there are always good things. Sometimes if you're very negative, you have to think hard, but there are always positives to any presentation. And you did it. A lot of people would be too fearful to do it. You did it. That is a big start. Think about what you perceive to be bad. And of course, think about the improvement that you can make afterwards. After your first presentation, it will feel like you've got the monkey off your back, as the expression goes. And it turns out it wasn't King Kong that was on your back. It was probably some cute little monkey. And you're wondering, why was I so scared of that? That wasn't so bad. I can actually get over this fear. And then you can start to grow, as we saw with the improvement. Until you've done the first presentation, you can't start improving. And you need to quickly do the second one, and the third one, and then the 10th one. Don't hold back, just jump in. My final tips I want to give you, we only have a little bit of time left. How do you give a confident delivery? We haven't touched on this because most presentations right now are on Zoom, they're on video, like me. You might have just seen my face like a postage stamp in the corner of the screen. So the visuals and the structure and everything else takes on the precedence in the presentation. But especially in face-to-face presentations, you need a confident delivery. I want to share some tips now that I showed to my students that have really helped my students giving a confident delivery. So let's take a look at these tips.
So what is good and bad posture? Let's talk about some of the bad posture first. Bad is when you look like you are trying to save yourself from that lion. So if you're doing this, this would be bad posture. You might see this military style when people are nervous. Hello, everybody. My name is Wayne. Their hands are behind their back. They think this will give them power. They're trying to show the lion that they're not scared. Same with the hands in front. That would be trying to, again, show that I'm not scared of you. I'm confident. But actually, that would show you are nervous. Another thing you might see some people doing, occasionally I might do it in these videos. I would rock a little bit when I'm thinking. Maybe I look up at the sky. Oh, what was that word I was going to say? That would be bad posture. And of course, if you are face-to-face, if you're in a room giving a presentation, looking in a different direction to the audience. So many students make this mistake. On the screen, they have a PPT, and they just look at the PPT. Hello, the audience is here, where you are right now, but they are looking this way. So yes, my number one hobby, I like to play soccer. I remember my first ever presentation to many people. I was age 17, and I did the same thing. I was very scared, but I was okay, I thought, but I looked at the PPT. I didn't want to look at the scary lions in the audience. So that would be a very bad posture too. But anything that makes you look uncomfortable or bored or nervous is not good posture. So I think good posture is standing straight, trying to look confident as you face the audience, and your arms, where do you put your arms? You don't do this, that makes you look nervous or bored. You don't put them in your pocket, you don't put them behind you, you don't put them in front of you. Your arms need to look comfortable. So you've got a few choices. You can put them next to your body, that looks relaxed. Or we have something called the resting position. You can put it in front of you. Let me get back a little bit further. You can see this, I have it like this. Like you see on a Korean news channel, where the arms are just resting. And then when I want to speak, I can start using my arms. So that is good posture. Stand straight, don't shake, don't lock your arms anywhere, keep them rested, and then you can bring them out. So I thought a lot about this. How do we teach gestures? I've helped hundreds of students now become more confident at using their hands in presentations. But how? How do you practice? Actually, I think it's very easy. When you are talking to your classmate, try speaking using gestures. So for example, a lot of people, when they speak, they don't use gestures. Maybe they're like this in a coffee shop or on Zoom. So how was your weekend? Oh, what will you do after this class? But this will really make it easy for you. If next time in Zoom you are asking and answering questions, say, oh, last weekend I went bowling, I went to the department store, it was really interesting. Oh, I bought a few nice things. Actually, I bought some new clothes. You see, if you do it naturally in a conversation, then when you do a presentation, it's natural, it's very easy. So that's something you can practice anytime. You can do this in Korean, any conversation. Just use your gestures, say, oh, I feel very hot today. Oh, how's the weather? You see, you're naturally using your hands. You don't even have to think about it. Most presenters, they don't write in a script, I will use my hands. I will move my hand here, and then I will touch my head, and then I will touch my clothes. No, it's natural. He has studied Bill Clinton, one of the best public speakers, one of the best. And what he does, of course, you'll notice presenters who are comfortable and confident, they will look around the room. But they don't look nervous. It's not like this. That would mean you're very nervous, or you're not a robot. That would be a bad idea too. What you need to do is when you're talking to your audience, you look at somebody for a few seconds, then somebody here for a few seconds, somebody here for a few seconds, then here, then here, then maybe go back here, then go back here. If you spend at least 3 seconds looking at somebody, they feel connected to you. They feel connected to your presentation. If you just do this and you don't really look at anybody, it looks like you're just a robot. It's just a video, you press play and here I go, here's my presentation. No, you need to look at people for a few seconds each, like Bill Clinton. Speaking naturally, like in a conversation. But the only difference is he emphasizes his words. He makes his words very clear. So in a conversation, no problem. Hey, how's it going? How's the weekend? You can talk and maybe it's not easy, clear all the time. But in a presentation, every word should be clear. Imagine somebody closes their eyes. They have to write every word in your presentation. If they can do it, you have a good speaking voice for presentations. So speak naturally, like you're on a radio and people can't see you.
All good advice there. I think I tell my students that advice and we practice, and as I said, always they become very confident and skilled public speakers. So for me, public speaking is about the training, the practice, but before you start doing that training, that improving, that practice, first you just have to do that first presentation. I do think everybody can become a great public speaker. So there's no reason you can't go onto the stage. Just very quickly before we finish today, there's a message from Maria I want to share. It didn't really fit the rest of my presentation, but I thought it was important enough that I wanted to share it right at the end. So if you can just watch Maria for a little bit, I think this is a very important message.
I think that a lot of people who are not native English speakers do more and more speaking at our KOTESOL conferences because it's something so critical to capture these voices in this moment because we need to have that inclusion and diversity represented in what is basically intercultural spaces.
That's right. If you are, this could be another reason you're not confident with presentations. Maybe you think your English is not good enough, or it's not fluent, or you're not native. Of course, that's rubbish. That's not true. There are many great speakers all around the world who are not native speakers of English, and they give amazing presentations. So if that's you, don't let that stop you doing public speaking. We would love to watch your presentations. So I've run to the end of my presentation there. So thank you very much. We pretty much reached the end of our time slot, which was 4 p.m. I'd be happy to stay here longer to answer any questions that you might have. But if you have no questions and you're happy, then thank you very much. And I wish you an enjoyable weekend.